Welcome to the Curdy D Show, a podcast presenting unique perspectives shaping the world. In each episode, we showcase stories of transformation, both in business and in life. Join us as we learn out loud together and humanize success stories. Let's get stoked with laughter and wisdom and take a peek into the emerging future, along with me, your host, Curdy D. Boys and girls, it is Nicole Noren. It's so good to see you.
Hi, Kirk. Good to see you too.
So this is going to be, I think, double the fun because we had a conversation a few weeks ago and it was an awesome conversation, but you were like on the road and you were in a hotel room and the internet was a little glitchy. And so like we were trying to edit it, just, it was like close, but no cigar. And we wanted it to be perfect because you're so amazing. You have such great stories to tell. So thank you for doing a redo.
Yeah, you're welcome.
and then you're off to another travels tonight. You're heading out going out to Indianapolis. Is that right?
Yeah, Betsy Irv is in the Indie Shorts Film Festival. It's an Oscar qualifying short film fest, one of the top short film fests in the country. We're really excited to screen at that festival.
Oh, that's great. Well, that's actually the trigger on what prompted me to want to reach out and have you have a conversation with us. And, you know, I saw online you had posted about some of the awards you were winning with Betsy and Irv. And as I clicked into the story, I was like, oh, this is so like interesting because of the contrast of the content. So we could dig into that and this incredible career that you've had.
Thank you.
And then you and I have been buddies and friends since high school. And
yeah,
look at us all grown up
30 plus years now.
And I always had such good memories of you at high school that you were just somebody that was just like radiant and had like awesome energy. And you still do.
Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's fun that we've stayed friends all these years. So thank you for that. Yeah, I guess kind of like to give the audience some context, tell us about Betsy and Irv.
Betsy and Irv is a short film that's very surprising, I think, for a lot of people. On the surface, and it starts out as in 1978 at Penn State University about the football team there. And it's about a sexual assault that happened involving a football player on that team and a woman that was a senior in school that year. And however, after that initial beginning of the film occurs, it takes a turn that you don't really expect, and it's very rare. And it ends up being a story that's inspirational and shocking for the good thing that happened, which is incredibly rare to hear when you have a story about sexual violence.
Yeah. And what was that turn of events?
Well, a football teammate of the perpetrator did something that was very unorthodox and would still be very unorthodox, I think, in that he stood up for the woman and spoke up to her, went to her, told her he would protect her and not allow her to become a pariah on campus. Yeah. And no one knew this had happened at the time. But however, we learned about it 40 years later when we were doing a story about this situation and about the teammate who was the rapist. So when we heard about it, we knew we wanted to dive in and look to see how that affect. So the Irv was the man who did the kind act, and Betsy was a young woman at the time. And then we pick back up with them 40 years later and see the effect of Betsy and what happened to her when she had someone be kind to her and be welcoming in that moment of extreme vulnerability. And it's really fascinating to see the difference when someone is supported in that moment versus when if they're turned away, which often happens, or people aren't believed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What when you guys picked it up 40 years after, what sort of, how'd you describe her life and where she sort of evolved to?
Well, she said that he absolutely changed the course of her life by doing that. Because she felt suddenly welcome and that she wasn't going to be this outsider for coming forward. And it was very, very rare for women to come forward with to allege any kind of sexual violence at that time. It was really hard to prove. Many times it wouldn't even be worth coming forward. So she stood up and was a very rare, strong woman at the time. But then she had this man come forward, her classmate, and do something kind that made her feel welcome. And they ended up becoming friends at the time that year. Nothing romantic happened. They both had significant others, and they just became buddies. And they went on with their lives after that. Irv went to the NFL, had a great career, and they had families and kind of moved on, and hadn't seen each other in about 40 years until we were shooting the film, and they were talking because of the book we were working on with ESPN.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's I watched the documentary. It's a shorter film. It's 20 minutes. Is that?
It's about 15 minutes.
Yeah. And it was really well done. It was like, what a great you guys did a great job telling the story, and
Thank you.
And I guess that's why you're winning these awards. Why do you think you're winning the awards? What awards have you won, and why do you think you're winning them?
We just won a sports Emmy for it, and we've won a Gracie Award that's an award for women and by women and about women. And we won a few Real Screen Awards. That's some more industry kind of award in the news, or it's in the doc and unscripted world. I think it's winning awards because it just resonates with people. I think. Oh shoot! I saw that the network was struggling, so I'm going to pick that back up.
You're good. Pick it back up.
Oh, okay. I just saw that. I think it's winning awards because it's just a story that resonates with people in a unique way. For people who may have gone through difficult times, they can relate to Betsy. And in that moment when she was believed and how it affected her, I think it hits home for them, but I think it really hits home with men. They don't get to see a lot of good guys portrayed in the media. And I don't like that. It's like one of the reasons
like a normal good guy. Like superheroes are kind of all over the place, but like just somebody that's kind of a Joe Ordinary being an undercover superhero.
Yeah. He's a little bit of a superhero in that he's an NFL player, but he is a very regular guy. And he he said multiple times he didn't think he was doing anything special or different. He was just kind of being himself and being a friend. And that, I think it resonates with. It also resonates, I think, with men too, because I think, or just people who have supported those who have been in tough situations, and you can relate in that I think there's a lot of people that are helpers, and they don't always see themselves portrayed on film either.
Yeah. So the film takes place in the fall of 1978 as Penn State football is seeking their first ever #1 national ranking. And at the time, he wasn't, he was a college player. He wasn't kind of NFL superhero yet. Mm-hmm. I wonder, do you have any context of what kind of pressure or blowback or sort of negative energy he received from the team or the school or the community at the time?
We don't think that he received that much because he was such a prominent player. He was a captain on the team. Yep. He was a leader. And I think because of his influence, there was definitely an extra element of race going on at the time. That you have to remember, this is 1978. Yeah.
He's a black guy.
A lot of stuff going on in rural Pennsylvania. They describe, both of them, that the fact that it wasn't lost on them that the group of players who came to her side to support her were actually the African-American players on the team. Yeah. So I think she said that she felt like they could relate to her and that she was standing up for, kind of against the majority of doing something that wasn't exactly popular, and they related to her somehow. And it's really multi-layered, and that was a factor as well, which was really interesting.
Yeah, I think, my mind sort of thinking about, kind of pulling the thread. You've been at ESPN for 20 plus years now, and you've won a ton of awards, looking up online, 5 Emmys, 4 Gracies, and investigative reporters and editors, first prize, and so many more. Talk to us about how you had the insight for Betsy and Irv. Like, what was the scuttlebutt that you did where you sort of had a clue about the story? And then And then I'd be curious to think and learn more about your framework for documentary storytelling, and how are they similar to what we see in Hollywood movies, and how are they different?
Well, the initial idea came about because my colleagues were working on a print story about a written story about the rapist in this story. And when I heard what had happened between Betsy and Irv
Mm,
a few years ago, we knew that there was something special there that we needed to tell, that we could dive into with
mm,
perhaps later. I kind of had the idea to do this first person short film about it, to hear directly from them and not have it be like a traditional voiceover kind of report, but I wanted to just let them speak,
yeah.
almost like diary going back to that time.
Mhm.
But yeah, that was because we've done so many stories on sexual violence that I see the network.
Yeah, I wonder if it's
Is it okay?
an issue with RAM on the computer.
Oh, oh, Darius.
Yeah, it's struggling again.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Now here I am. I could pick it back up. I think I was fine. So I perked up and kind of knew this would be a good story because of all the times we've covered similar
Yeah.
stories that didn't have the same type of ending. The women end up in very different situations and have different life trajectories because they're oftentimes when they go up against big programs, and especially small town college towns like this, they're not they're treated very differently, and you can see the effect of what happens when someone is treated as a pariah.
Mm.
And so it really stood out that we were able to look at, like, wow, what could happen that would be different if someone is in that moment believed. So
Yeah, that's a great instinct or insight. So that makes so you were doing one story that kind of led to the next. That makes sense, and is that a pretty common pattern when you're
yeah,
doing?
well, it's sad that's just been kind of like a beat that we've been
Yeah,
working on. Done a
yeah,
lot of different stories on these types of situations.
mhm.
So it helps us know how to cover them well. And it also leads to us having people reach out to us because they know that we're going to handle it sensitively and
Yeah,
fairness. And it's when you're dealing with trauma reporting, it can be pretty sticky. Sometimes there's a lot of things that make it difficult when you're telling people stories who have traumatic things to retell.
yeah. Before we double click into my second question about the
Mm-hmm.
framework, give us some context about what it is that you do. Like, what's the mandate, or how do you think about your role and what you're doing there?
Wait, maybe can you re-ask? I was gonna like my role, like actual position, or my role for.
Yeah, like what, like so you in the context of like directing and
Oh,
producing, and
okay.
like what is it that like how, like, is there a like is there a specific mandate that you have around a certain beat?
Mm. Yes. So yeah. So I've been producing and directing short films and reports there for a very long time, and traditionally it's around education, health, youth sports, and it's sadly had to do. There's been a lot of stories about gender-based violence,
Yeah,
and
and this is
that.
in the context of ESPN.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, but this, we'll branch out into other stuff. The recent feature documentary that just came out earlier this year called Listen, that I was working on for 4 years, that also went over and was a subject of a special on ABC 2020 that week for 2 hours. So.
Oh, amazing. When we talked last time, I asked you a question about like kind of the most, time you've maybe felt unsafe or kind of scared. And you told this crazy story about the work you guys were doing, I think with the World Cup
Yeah.
trafficking stuff. Do you want to,
Yeah. There's,
what happened there?
well, we were working on a story about human trafficking in trying to see if how a major sporting event like a World Cup would be affected by human trafficking. And
Mm,
so we were in South Africa. This is 2010. It was leading up to in the few weeks before the World Cup was starting. And I spent time in Cape Town and Johannesburg. And there were a couple of hairy situations involving, let's just say, organized crime individuals trying to maintain, I'd say, coverage and control of some of their young clients, young workers on the street. And we were trying to prove and look, we were trying to see how much the World Cup coming to town and coming to that country was affecting human trafficking, if it was at all. And we were able to prove that it absolutely was, because we had gone undercover and went into various illegal brothels and then just on the street. And it was absolutely tragic. But at one point, we had some hidden cameras. But then at one point we had a camera inside one of our vehicles that was, the windows were tinted, but someone, some of the pimps, I would say, let's call them pimps, watching, they somehow saw a camera. And they started chasing us at very high speed. Well, at first they kind of tried to trap us in the gas station, and then we had to take off. That whole shoot, we were with definite serious security, armed security, armored cars, and we were incognito at the time. It wasn't clear at all that we were in the media or that we had guards with us, but we had to race away from there in very extreme circumstance, and it was quite scary.
Yeah, I'm glad you're okay, and that's really good to tell those stories. What ended up? Did you guys get did that story come out?
Yeah, it came out, and we actually won the Murrow Award that year for it. It was the first time a sports story ever won the Murrow Award for investigative reporting.
Wow, that's remarkable. So, these stories that we're referencing, we'll be linking to those in the show notes, so if people want to click in and watch. Please do, and spread the word. And I mean, I think every time I'm having like a more kind of like contextual question before I want to like pull this thread around frameworks, which we will get to. Okay. One of the things that I remember we talked about last time was this kind of check and balance and a sort of a publisher editor dynamic between ESPN, which is like, beyond the 800-pound gorilla. I mean, they're just so massive. I think it's one of Disney's most profitable units. Mm-hmm. And, I mean, basically monopoly on sports. And how do they, the fact that they have this investigative reporting unit that's out there, I think it's very admirable. I mean, it's unfortunate that it needs to be there, but I think it's one of those things where it does probably keep people in check. And I mean, even the story about the gymnast doctor, mm-hmm. I think you were involved in that.
Yep.
Talk to us a little bit about kind of how that sort of, I don't want to call it a conflict, but it's sort of it's an interesting dynamic. I'm sure that I'm sure there's certain people at ESPN when you guys are doing some of these stories aren't 100% thrilled, or even more the schools or maybe the advertisers. Like how does talk to us about that?
Yeah, we're not always welcomed with open arms, even internally, honestly, too. Yeah. Sometimes that's rare. We are given, our investigative unit is very robust. A lot of people who are sports fans might not even know that we have a large investigative unit that handles a lot of in-depth long-term projects. And it's very unique because ESPN has huge business deals with sports leagues and teams, and it's like we're business partners with a lot of the people that we're covering, and the institutions and the teams and the businesses that we're covering. So when the financials are in the middle like that, I think there's a perception that we wouldn't be able to cover those types of, that environment in the sports world fairly, but it's honestly not at all a factor. And we're sometimes like a lot more hard hitting than I think some people in the sports world want us to really be. But we have a lot of support, thankfully, and over the years have had continued support to do our work. and it's very unique, I think, in that we're a watchdog for our own world, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
well, I think that's I think it'll make people think twice, and I think a certain amount of accountability, but the more accountability, the better.
Hmm. I agree.
For yeah. So I guess so. That's so when you're doing your documentaries, do you have like, is there like a pattern, like, okay, this is one of those, oh, this is one of these, and if so, like what are the different sort of archetypal stories that come to mind?
Well, I try to do stuff that's going to be a little bit different, but I also think that I tend to gravitate towards stories that um, there's something that needs to be uncovered and told and shared. And I really gravitate towards lessons that can be learned and things that I might feel sometimes that need a little more attention. So I think that might be a theme. Drawing accountability is just a huge theme in a
Yeah.
lot of the work that I've done. But also sometimes I just love diving in and going at issues that are complex and
Mhm.
trying to help explain them and dive in a way that help people understand them more.
Mhm.
For instance, it was really one of my favorite stories was about the former NBA player. There it goes. I'll start over again. Yeah, one of my favorite stories that I've done is on former NBA player Enes Kanter, who some people may remember was an NBA player who he's also a very outspoken political dissident. It's from Turkey. He's had a lot of problems with the Turkish government um, trying to bring him back to Turkey for a while, and they've canceled his passports. They've put an international arrest warrants for him. He's super outspoken against not only his own country but against China now. He's not popular for a lot of circles for people who
Yeah.
are business circles, let's say. And anyway, I wanted to do a story on the origin of his political dissident relationship with his own country and what that was like and why they were so opposed to him speaking out. So it was a great window to get onto the Turkish political situation. We were able to dive in. We were able to go to Turkey when not a lot of American media is allowed to go there and talk to any government officials about their human rights records. And it was fascinating. That was like a really that's an example of like a story I love, where it's very much an explanatory journalism type of story where there's not a side at all. This is what journalism to me should be. It's that you're
Yeah.
giving people a window that they wouldn't otherwise know about it.
Yeah, you're giving people context, both sides of what people are talking about.
Yeah,
If people are talking about a particular topic, that's catching some, people's imagination, and what's the fuss about?
yeah. And
Yeah.
making people think. That's kind of my biggest thing is asking questions and making people think. So
Hmm.
yeah.
Do you actually, is one of my dear friends and mentors, Duke Stump, is an incredible design thinker, and one of the things I learned from him was, whenever you're working on a project, when if it, like, for example, I do a lot of events,
Mhm.
and so one of the design questions is, when people are leaving and going to their car, going home for the night, what's the one thought I want them to think?
Hmm.
And kind of working backwards from that and kind of designing towards that emotion. Do you have a framework around that when you're telling your stories, or is there some more of an evolution as you kind of get into the material? Any sort of thoughts about the inception that directors are often able to incept into the viewer's mind?
I think my goal is I just want people to think.
Mm-hmm.
And I would hope that after they're done watching something that I've made, that they're going to be thinking maybe a little bit broadly and more different, and also just like the human side to things. I like really
Mm-hmm.
just humanizing issues.
Yeah.
So that's my goal. I think one of my criticisms I have with a lot of it's documentaries have just become so popular. But there was a while where it still feels to me a little bit like I have an issue with their advocacy pieces, because
Mhm.
I do not think those are effective at helping people change the minds, open people's. I mean, everyone is becoming so fragmented with how they believe now too. So I think the only way you can really do that is by showing people fair pieces of work that make them think rather than tell them how they should think.
Yeah. Yeah. More Socratic inquiry versus a dogmatic, from
Yeah.
on high. Yeah. I can appreciate that. What's a project that what's a,
Oh, good. I'm glad it's
uh,
further than I'm talking, I think. Was that good? Did you get the last part?
yeah. Yeah. We got it. So Levi, we're going to have a little bit of editing here, but, all good. Um, yeah. I think it's with your computer RAM.
Okay, now I'm back. Did I finish that question?
Yeah. Yeah. We're good. Yeah.
Okay. Network.
What's a project that you're most grateful or proud of?
Um, Probably one on a former college swimmer named Sasha Menukori. She it's a story about mental health and just her individual battle with trying to get health, and then what happened in the course of her having a major crisis when she was at the University of Missouri. It really meant a lot to me. I it meant a lot because I care strongly about mental health. I have a very personal connection to it. I had a younger brother named Jared who uh, had a long battle with bipolar and substance use
Yeah.
issues. And in the course of working on that story, Jared died, and I had to kind of simultaneously work on that story while dealing with the death of my brother. And it has a lot of meaning for me because of what we were able to accomplish with it, but also just able to, I think, personally overcome during that time period when it was difficult to focus on a lot of
Yeah.
emotions.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. When we talked last time, and I had sort of done my typical prompt around challenges that you faced that you're comfortable sharing, and how'd you get over it, and what gift did that pain give you? We got into that, and I remember you telling me about that a few years back, and I didn't know about that at the time, and
Mm-hmm.
I can't imagine losing a brother or a sibling or family member, and a friend even, just due to mental illness, and I'm really sorry that happened. And yeah, I'm glad that that story was able to give you some kind of solace around it.
Yeah.
What ended up happening? You got the story this out there, and
Yeah, yeah. We ended up being able to raise a lot of awareness about how college athletic departments and universities in general were treating students who were in the middle of when they were having mental health crises. It's
mhm.
still such a huge topic right now,
Yeah,
as many people know. A lot of schools are severely understaffed with dealing with a lot of mental health struggles that students have. But
yeah,
Sasha's case was just a bright light of what everything that could go wrong, and it raised a lot of awareness. It caused a lot of change because athletic departments were very afraid from that point on to have a situation like that where an athlete would be in a very vulnerable situation, and then she wasn't treated properly. Um, and it made a lot of athletic departments. There was a movement at the same time going to make sure that licensed mental health practitioners would be every athletic department would have one. In
yeah,
the past, it had been a lot more coming from a sports psychology approach, and not the people that were kind of trying to help deal with mental health issues weren't always the best people. So they made sure after that, and then in that same time period, the NCAA was helping push a lot of change in the positive direction towards mental health with athletes too.
yeah. So it sounds like um, and from the work that you've done and the experiences you've had, does it feel like there's an increase in kind of mental health issues in society, or has it just always been there and we just didn't really know what it was, and it just,
Mm.
now that we're more hyper connected, we're just sort of more aware of it? And
That's a great question.
I mean, it's
I
probably hard to say because we don't really have the data, so it's probably somewhat subjective. But I don't know. Maybe there's some data sets you're aware of through the work you've
Yeah.
done.
Well, I all I know is I can speak from like a perspective of being in the media and wanting to cover the topic.
Hmm.
When I first wanted to cover, I saw like a little over 20 years ago, I saw that there was just woefully undercovered, and it was really difficult to get stories about it on. It
Hmm.
was just kind of I think an untapped, like unknown. People weren't talking about it. Still, there was such a stigma,
Hmm.
and especially in sports. But also, I think there was still such a stigma in general in our society to talk about it. And then it's been a very fascinating evolution to get to this point now where it's becoming so normalized to talk about brain health. And
Yeah.
it's wonderful. But to your point, yeah, and it has made me wonder, like, what is there so much more now where people are needing help more? Or is it just finally where people can talk about it? I honestly don't know the answer, but I just know it's important to talk about because I
Yeah.
think there is, it is important. It is, you have to watch out because there can be some negative side effects from talking about it. For instance, in the whole realm of like suicide talk, you have to be really careful and sensitive um, because there can be sometimes situations like the copycat effect.
Yeah.
I think that there's a lot of, as long as people are talking about it in ways that are coming from sensitive places and an approach that's not, there's a lot of change that's happened. I think that's very positive. Like for instance, people no longer say mental illness anymore; they say mental health. There's
Yeah.
like so many terms and so many things
Yeah.
that have changed. Um, that
That's so funny you mentioned that because I was even just thinking, like, I don't even wonder if mental health is the right label for it because so much of it has to also do with emotional regulation.
yeah,
And a lot of it is sort of the interplay between the brain and the body, and
absolutely,
people feeling like, you know, in my experience, anytime I am sort of dysregulated emotionally, I'm going to go try to cope somehow with, and as I've gotten older, I've tried to become wiser and make sure that my coping mechanisms are quote unquote healthier. Like,
yes,
instead of like going and, rolling a joint or like going and,
drinking.
drinking, maybe do some exercise or,
Hmm.
go surfing or, meditate or do yoga and just getting back in the body in a more sort of, you know, like not natural, but like, those kind of thoughts. Any thought about the kind of brain body, bit?
Yeah. Well, this is coming now from my yoga teacher perspective. I've been practicing yoga for 25 plus years, and yeah, absolutely. That's been fascinating to see that so many more people now are turning towards when they're regulating their emotional or physical dysregulation, when they're choosing healthy ways to do it, whether through breath work, meditation, exercise. That's been such I think, a positive step that has taken, especially with men. Honestly, I feel like women have kind of maybe been aware of that a little bit
Yeah.
more, and
Yeah.
now men are catching on,
Yeah.
or different. It doesn't, it's totally gender non-specific, but in general, I think more people, let's just say, are catching on that um, there's a connection. Absolutely
Yeah.
holistic. It's all connected. Your brain, your gut, your body, your mind. Like, it's all connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If there was a different label for mental health that was more sort of, broad or anything that comes to mind, would
I
it be
would
more
say just
like,
brain health because that was one thing I've always tried to do, even at ESPN when I was kind of a young and I would call myself probably annoying person that was always in people's ears trying to get people to talk more about mental health issues and cover them. I would try really hard to always say brain health and brain, like the brain is no different than your body. And in a way, I think to get people to understand more who might normally think just from a athletic kind of macho thing that they wouldn't care about mental health. I
yeah.
would just equate it to like a knee injury and say,
Mhm.
if you have a knee injury, it's no different. It's no different than having, if you're going to have anxiety or depression, and people need to start thinking about it like that. And that's always stuck as a way to compare it to me. I just think of it as overall brain health compared to.
Yeah. Kind of full circle back to the story about your brother is Jared, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it's such a tragic story. Is there any sort of like gift somehow maybe in a small way that experience has given you, or some kind of whether it's strength or resilience or otherwise that you've been able to muster through that process?
Yeah, it absolutely. Yeah, my brother struggled, seriously struggled for over 15 years on and off the streets, in and out of mental hospitals, jails. Um, it was a serious struggle, and it helped me gain an appreciation for those in our society who are suffering.
Yeah.
And I have extreme compassion and empathy for people who. Ooh, that was a network. Am I okay? Okay,
Yeah, you're
I'll
good.
pick it
Yeah,
up.
extreme
Okay.
compassion and empathy.
Yeah. Okay, I'll pick that up. Yeah, I have extreme compassion and empathy for people who are suffering, um, in our society and around us, family members, friends, people on the streets, anyone, because of my experience with my brother. And I see my brother in their faces. I
Yeah.
cannot, even my brother died 10 years ago, and I still see him, all the time and people around me. And I think it's led to more compassion in general. But then, tragically, his death affected me personally in the realm of, it really hammered home that life was very short. And I knew that when you lose a sibling that young, um, and after a struggle, to help them get help, and just it reinforced that my life is very short and I wanted to live it to the absolute fullest. So I have had, I'm not really waiting around to live my life, and I've had a mentality of seizing the day and trying to soak up any experience I can, and really, yeah, have healthy relationships, because you might not be around to see people, so you need to make sure you tell them how you feel. Things like, yeah, there's a lot of, as the there's a huge effect when you lose, I think, a sibling or any family member, parent, anyone really young. It's a mortality that you face that makes some people wake up and want to like live their life a little bit fuller.
Yeah. Like I said earlier, my impression of you from school was you had great energy, and the vim and vigor just continues to, radiate. So
Thanks.
that is, I guess, like a really, what a contrast. And I have kind of a opposite side of the coin, is similar with, in the context that when I was at college in UC Santa Barbara, I helped my dad get sober from a really bad drug and alcohol problem.
Yeah, I remember your.
And I staged an intervention and kind of figured it out, and it was a lot to deal with. And he's now 20 plus years sober. He was episode number 1 on my show, and we were able to laugh that his sober birthday was old enough to drink, that he had just turned 21 years sober. And the fact that we could laugh about it was a big milestone. And, it's, I think back to the point that they think there's just a lot of people in the world that have challenges coping. And, it's so easy to, grab a bottle or, and that sort of thing. So, I think these conversations, if there's anybody that in the audience that we could help, I speaking on my behalf, please do let me know. And I know you, Nicole, are active in the local nonprofit in Ventura, helping folks. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, Project Experience for Youth. We help, the under like quite a few Title I schools in Ventura County, mainly in the Rio School District. We privately fund, field trips for the kids there to help them have, just basic experiences with the field trips, going to the zoo, going to the aquarium, going to the Natural History Museum, and they just wouldn't otherwise get a chance to do that because they don't have parents that can participate in their PTA and raise money to go on field trips. So we kind of help fill that gap and make sure kids there in the Rio School District get to have those opportunities.
Cool. Well, next time you're doing a fundraiser, hit me up and I'll contribute.
Okay, I will.
That's awesome that you're doing that. Well, I think there's a couple other things I wanted to chat about, but I know you got to get going for your trip to Indianapolis so you can go win another award.
I'm fine.
So one of the things, kind of turning the page, right now it's, what is it, mid-July 2023, and there's a big strike happening in the entertainment business. I think it started with the writers, and now it's with talent and actors. I was in Baja, Mexico this last week with a very famous actor. I won't say who it was, but he was talking about how it was impacting him now, and some of the things he was working on. How is it impacting you, and what sort of any thoughts that you have about it that you're comfortable sharing?
Oh, fantastic.
So how about just pick up? I didn't hear anything, so you could pick up like your answer.
You said you were with the actor, and
yeah,
it's still struggling. Come on, Philly network.
Oh, good.
Okay, there we go.
And the actor was telling me about how he was impacted. And Levi, you could help edit this out. And I was just curious if you're being impacted at all by it, and if you're comfortable sharing any views about what's going on.
We are not being impacted because we're a non-union shop at ESPN, at least in our realm that we work in with the news side and stuff. Yeah. So since I do follow a little bit more on that news, but yeah, absolutely support the strikers, and I think the overall it is a window onto a much bigger issue, having to do a lot of issues with AI. So I'm watching it closely because it affects all of us in that industry. A lot of their discussions are about that, but also I just think it's fascinating if you're the argument of and just the discussion, let's say, of the artist and the idea of these bigger studios and streamers and the whole idea of content creation. I just think it's a fascinating time because people have never been able to share content directly so easily, and now they can. So I think it's just this really, like, the things are changing very fast, and people are realizing we've had this struggle like for so long, right? The whole notion of artists and getting to have their art directly go to consumers and art fans, and how do you do it? And people are going to make money on it, and whether it's the musicians and having to deal with the record labels and publishers, and so it's I don't know. I'm always really intrigued by it, being like a history nerd and caring a lot about union issues in our history and reading about it. So I'm keeping up with it a lot, and I'm very curious to see how it might affect the doc world. I think it's TBD on that. One would think that people are going to start needing some stuff to fill their gaps if there's not going to be scripted content. But yeah, we'll see how that goes down. I am really curious to see how it affects just the artist distribution directly to consumers, though, and if there's going to be more.
Yeah, I've had some incredible experiences using the AI, both with ChatGPT and Google Bard, in the context of this new fund that we're setting up. And it's very complex. We're doing stuff that's international, and there's emerging technology involved that's creates some regulatory complexity, and the amount of information that we're able to sort of collect and parse and analyze and present. I could tell the thing to create me a spreadsheet that has XYZ, and I could look at it and ask it to add me another row, and it's just really compressed our learning journey in the fund. And I guess this is doing the work of like an expensive analyst, right?
Yeah.
And and that's sort of like, I think the good side of the coin. I think also my wife is a world class software designer, Holden, who you know, and she's been able to have. I've seen some experimentation she's done. Like she just whipped out this really cool imagery with these astronauts carrying surfboards on the moon, and she was able to do it like in real time, and it was so cool. And you know, someone like her who's like top of her field and could do that sort of thing manually, it's able to make her her output just so much more productive. But you know, I guess it'll be interesting to see how it does impact storytelling. I mean, I even had it write me a song.
Really? Was it
Yeah.
good?
Well, it was lyrics.
Okay. But
Yeah.
I meant like, was this like, what did you think of the?
I thought it was really good. It was like, you know, but part of it, I mean, I think maybe what I thought it was good though is because it was like, oh my God, feels like I'm cheating, and maybe that's the bad part of it, you know. Like, but I mean, I gave it a bunch of parameters, and it rhymed, and it was funny, and it was pretty wild. So I could
It was
see
funny.
how,
Wow.
yeah, like I can see, and I think it was sort of funny because it was a little bit absurd. Yeah, like it wasn't like, you know, like like yeah.
Did you actually perform this song then?
No. What I should do is like as the outro cue, I could read a couple lines from it. But
That would be cool.
I could see how it's, you know, it's I mean, look, like, you know, I mean, if you look back at media, just like media theory, it's, you know, Marshall McLuhan. This is what I studied at UC Santa Barbara, communications and mass comm, and you know, the medium is the message. And you know, we went from like, you know, sending letters and sending on horses, the post, to like a telegram, to radio, to telephones and TV, and there's like 3 channels, and the production, the cost to produce something was very expensive. And then like cable comes, and now you got cell phones, and now the production, like, you know, we have these like supercomputers that are doing like HD, you know, quality on the phone. You can make movies on your phone, and the consumer has a much lower sort of limit of what be acceptable to watch. Like YouTube is just completely like lowered the bar. And I don't know the economics of how the media and the content business works. But you know, you hear these like you see these memes on the internet where, you know, famous musicians are pushing back and being like, look, how do you have 1 billion streams on Spotify and not make any money from it? You know,
it's a great question.
Like,
you know, it's hard. It really is, because I don't know how many artists are going to continue to be able to make it if they can't. Yeah. But there seems like there has to be another way to, you know, help people get directly, you know, be able to benefit from their art. Like it's just, yeah, it's a huge, I think about it all the time. And for music, I just now, because the streaming is so small, the amount of that, I just really try to go to concerts and try to buy vinyl from all the big artists that I love and support. But I think there's a change happening in that realm too, with audio and just storytelling in general. You mentioned the different qualities of production value and how people, I just think it's true that it doesn't matter as much when people just want to see and hear, like they want to connect and they want to have good story. And I think it's just story first. So
yeah. Well, yeah, I don't know why I thought of it, but like the Blair Witch Project was like so low budge, you know, but it just, you know, it was like a great example of like an indie scary thing, and people just, you know, it was like novel at the time. Yeah, I think stories is it's what kind of makes us uniquely human from the dawn of time around a fire, and I don't think that's ever going to change. And I think that's, you know, yeah. So, well, this has been an incredible conversation. Is there anything else that we missed, or that would be worth talking about before we kind
I
of
keep
close?
admiring your is that a resonator back there?
Oh yeah, right here. This is the resonator. It's a very
Nice.
heavy guitar. Yeah.
I'm so bummed I'm missing Jerry Douglas. I'm gonna go to town and I miss him tonight.
Oh, bummer. Where's he playing?
At the Libero here in Santa Barbara.
The Libero. I haven't been there in a minute. That's a great little venue.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's a great segue into one of my questions.
Okay.
If you could have any band, I actually know the answer that you said last time, but I wonder if it'd be the same. I always ask this question at the end. If you could have any band, artist, or musician play any venue in the world, past, present, or future, who would it be and where?
I actually wish I could have been at a concert. There was a few shows, but yeah, Talking Heads in 1983, 84. Actually, I don't know, one of those 2 years when they played at the Wiltern in LA. It was the subject of Stop Making Sense, one of my favorite films ever that Jonathan Demme did. But yeah, best concert film ever. That if I could have been at that show, like that band at that time period and those outfit, I would have. It was amazing to see him play 4 or 5 years ago here at the Santa Barbara Bowl and see his updated tour. That was an incredible tour. But yeah, to be back and see the Talking Heads then, it would have been incredible.
Yeah, I grew up when we were kids. We had a lake house at Lake Nacimiento, and we had this water ski boat with this killer stereo system, and the Talking Heads would be always playing, and it was like that was like as good as it. That was such good times. I know that image you're talking about where he's doing that funny dance with those the white pants pulled up above his waist.
With his stereo that starts.
Yeah, I haven't seen the film, so great call out. I'm in for a treat. It's one of my favorite bands.
That's surprising.
Yeah, that is surprising.
It's great.
Well, if folks want to get a hold of you, what's a good channel? Are you on? I mean, your Instagram's great to follow.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram and LinkedIn too.
Yeah, what's your IG handle?
I think it's just my name, Foley.
And Noren?
Yeah, no, my name, Nicole Noren. I might have a peace sign in it.
Okay. Yeah, and then LinkedIn is great. Yeah, so if anybody has any great documentary ideas that
send them my way.
Nicole is awesome, and I can't wait to see you at our high school reunion soon. We're not going to say what year it is. We're going to say it's 10-year reunion.
Leave people guessing. Great. Yeah, we're looking forward to seeing you guys too.
Yeah, I might have to publish this like the night before.
That would be great, actually.
You know what I have that I have in the vault? I have a video of the last day of high school. I brought my dad's video camera, and I have the VHS tape, and I haven't watched it since then.
You could get it transferred to.
I know. Maybe I need to do that, and I could cut some video and push it out for the reunion.
Wait, were you filming at our graduation ceremony?
No, it was the actual last day of school.
Oh, we actually had a fake graduation, like a practice.
Yeah.
And then I went and told them they couldn't have a prayer, and they had to try to force me to introduce the prayer, and I said no. Oh
my gosh! Weren't you like the captain of the cheerleading squad too?
Yes. Such a dumbass.
Go Bulldogs!
Anyway,
such good times, Nicole. You're such an amazing human, great friend, and congrats for just an amazing career and a wonderful life. And I'm glad that I've been able to have a small little glimpse into it. So I'm excited about more memories, and I hope you have a wonderful trip, and I hope you win the award.
Oh, thank you. Thanks a lot. Great chatting.
I'm at Curdy D on Twitter and Instagram, also Kurt Deredix on LinkedIn. Please do give us a rating and review at ratethispodcast.com/Curdy D. And until next time, Curdy D loves you.
Thanks for listening. To review the show notes for this episode, which includes a summary, key takeaways, and any links mentioned, visit CurdyD.com. Be sure to follow or subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts to be notified when new episodes go live. Stay tuned for more unique perspectives shaping the world on The Kurtie D Show.